This happened about 2 months ago. I was heading out to meet a guy for our first date, and super excited about it. Since it was a first date, I was dressed a bit more provocatively than normal. But for me, that just means a fitted, slightly low-cut shirt with black pants. Anyway, I requested the Uber, and when the car got there, I opened the back door to get in, which I almost always do. However, the driver insisted that I sit up front. Even after I politely tried to decline, he put his hand out to stop me from getting in the back, and literally insisted that I sit up front. That was the first red flag. When I turned to sit down, I saw in my peripheral vision that he had in his hand on the seat, waiting for me to sit on it. I managed to sit as far away from him as possible to avoid it, and he withdrew his hand. I was pretty creeped out by this point, so I pulled out my phone and immediately started texting my cousin, telling her what had happened and to keep talking to me. He then started asking me questions, starting with where I was going. I told him I was on my way to a date and was really looking forward to it, thinking this would make him leave me alone. Nope. He looked me up and down and said, "Really? You're not married? When I saw you, I thought you were going out and your husband and kids were staying home." Weirdly specific, right? I just said, nope, not married and no kids. That made him start in on me about how I should have children and that children should be my first priority right now. I tried several times to get off the subject of kids and tried just ignoring him, but nothing worked. Finally, I told him that I wasn't able to have children, thinking that would shut him up. Again, nope. That just prompted some extremely invasive questions about my health. I finally just snapped at him and said, "If I try to carry a baby, it will likely kill me, okay?" He just shrugged and told me how I needed to pray harder for God to heal me so that I could have his children, and that he would love to give me all the children I could ever want. He repeatedly reached over as if he was going to touch me, and I recoiled every time, and told him how uncomfortable that made me feel. He apologized, and then started talking about how he couldn't help it because of how amazingly beautiful I was, and that everyone from his country, I want to say I was Kenya, but it may have been Nigeria, would be in love with me. By this point, I'm getting really nervous, because he's acting like he was going to kidnap me or something. I told him that I was taking to my cousin via text, and then called the restaurant and gave my information to put my date and I on the wait list, and also to give them my information in case I didn't show up. This made him quiet down for a few minutes, thankfully, but as we got close to the restaurant, he started saying, "When can I see you again?" I don't know when I will see you again, and that makes me sad. I just said, well, I guess if I ever end up using an Uber again, and you somehow end up as the driver, which is highly unlikely. I didn't want to be too firm because I was frankly scared at this point, and the restaurant was so close that I didn't want to risk pissing him off and making him take off with me. He continued to talk about how upset he was that he didn't know if he'd ever see me again, and insisted that I do something to make him feel better. Finally, we got within a block of the place, and I unlocked the door and jumped out when he stopped, telling him to leave me the hell alone. He looked furious, but when he reached out, I was already out of the car. Obviously, I contacted Uber and told them everything. He was fired within the hour. They told me that because of their privacy policy, they couldn't tell me exactly what they did to him, but no one else would ever have to experience that from him ever again. So yeah, he was fired. I am always extremely nervous whenever I have to take Uber, but unfortunately, I haven't experienced anything like this since. I did end up telling my date about it. He gave me some interesting insight. When I told the driver I was on my way to a date, my thought was that he would back off it. He knew that. According to my date and a couple of male friends, that actually just let him know that I was single, and it was recommended that I say that I'm married in the future creepy scenarios of harassment, although I didn't know if that would have stopped it either. A couple of days ago, myself and a couple of friends went to a large city for a concert. We booked a hotel just a few minutes from where the concert was supposed to take place. But 2 days before the trip, it was moved to another venue across town, and there was no time to change our hotel. It was now about a 20-minute drive across town to get there in a city where we were unfamiliar with. We decided it would be easier to use the Uber app for the first time and get a ride with someone who most likely knew where they were going to, so we shouldn't have to worry about it. I was a little hesitant about it. The idea of riding with a random stranger who just downloaded an app and decided to be an amateur taxi didn't sit well with me, but it was a lot cheaper than a taxi and none of us had much cash on us, so it was really our only option. Things started out well enough. We booked the ride, the guy showed up within minutes, and we all piled in. He was nice enough, and we made some small talk for a bit. Then we get to a residential neighborhood, and he tells us we're here. There was nothing even remotely close to a concert venue in sight. He tells us that we must have entered their address wrong, and we looked it up ourselves and showed him that we most definitely did not, and we are on the completely wrong side of town. He gets pissed, reprograms his GPS to the correct location, and tears off. No longer driving cautiously and no longer friendly and talkative. About half an hour later, we were finally nearing our concert destination. We were following along on our own phone's GPS now, and he misses the exit on the freeway. Instead of doing what a normal person would and continuing on, taking the next exit or letting the GPS recalculate, he stops on the highway and looks at his phone to try and figure out what to do. He then turns on the flashers and throws the car into reverse on the interstate, like he's going to back up and take the exit. Needless to say, a car comes screeching to a stop behind us, barely missing us. Unfortunately, the car behind them did not. I will never forget the sound of the people behind us screaming as the back end of their car came up to the ground. They were hit so hard. Then, the guy tells us he doesn't want any trouble and drives off. At this point, we were just telling him to take an exit and let us out. When he does so, we realize we're on the correct street and about a mile away from the concert, so we go ahead and have him take us the rest of the way. We couldn't get out of the car fast enough. We all stood there dumbfounded and eventually decide we need to talk to the cops. Luckily, there was one working at the concert, so we gave him what information we could, but it wasn't much. He basically told us since the guy wasn't physically involved in the accident, even though he caused it, that he wouldn't be in trouble for leaving the scene. My friend who ordered the ride was looking at his app to see what options he had to report the guy to Uber and noticed he had charged us double for all the extra driving that was entirely his fault. Pretty much ruined our evening in our Uber experience. We were terrified to take another on the way back, but didn't have much choice. Luckily, the ride home was great. The driver was friendly and professional and had us back at the hotel in 15 minutes instead of the 45 minutes of hell we had endured on the original trip. So crazy Uber driver, let's not meet again.